Hello fellow woodworkers and welcome to this week's edition of the Garage Workshop, and this week we're going to be making a mobile trolley for my saw stop compact miter saw. Roll the intro. So earlier in the year, I was fortunate enough to be sent a saw stop compact table saw, which I've used on a number of projects in the Garage Workshop since I've had it. Fair to say, I was really impressed with the quality of the saw, and I'll put a link in the description of this video to my tool review of it. But the saw stop is not without its drawbacks, the main one being its lack of mobility around the workshop. Now, if you're taking this saw onto a site, or if you're using it in a sort of semi-fixed place, then it's not an issue. But for me, in a relatively small garage workshop, being able to move the trolley that contains the saw, the folding stand around, would be absolutely ideal, because it is a little bit sort of stuck where it is. Now, I upgraded to the saw stop from my Rage 5S by Evolution, which was built in to a sort of cart. It has a trolley with it, with a collapsible stand, which makes it really super useful around the garage workshop. But the stand that comes with the saw stop isn't mobile. It doesn't have wheels or anything on it. And the stand itself weighs just over 8 kilograms or 18 pounds. Now, if you combine that with the weight of the actual saw, which is 31 kilograms or 68 pounds, you are looking at a total combined weight of nearly 40 kilograms or 86 pounds, which is actually quite a lot to shift around. So in this week's video, I'd like to see if I can address that issue by making a wooden framework stand to put the folding stand on that the saw sits on. Now, there's a couple of really important considerations here. Obviously, the first being the wooden frame, or whatever it is that I use to do this, is going to be holding over 39 kilograms or nearly 90 pounds in weight. So if I put it on casters, they need to be heavy duty industrial casters that are able to take that amount of weight. The other thing is, using a table saw like this on a mobile cart means you are going to have a little bit of wobble when you're making cuts. So I also need to consider that. And the last consideration is the floor in the garage workshop. As you've seen from previous videos, the saw in the garage workshop is awful in terms of how flat or unflat it is. So I'm looking at possibly seeing if I can combine some sort of system into it where I can possibly raise or lower the saw depending on where it's put in the workshop. Now, at the moment, I've only got an idea of how I'm going to get that to work. I haven't started this project yet, so let's see if I can accomplish all of those things in one go. So, fellow woodworkers, I've got the folding frame off of the compact table saw, as you will have just seen, and I just wanted to test how level it was with my spirit level. And with my level on it, it is 100% perfectly level, which I know is true because my workbench is also 100% flat level. But interestingly, if I wobble it, there is a lot of play in this bottom right hand corner. I've just slid a couple of shims of wood underneath it, and there is actually a 3mm gap between the bottom of the rubber foot and the table. Now, that doesn't sound a lot, but in terms of keeping this nice and level, that is actually a huge amount. 3mm is a lot. So there is a potential way I could do something about that by having a fiddle with these legs. If I just loosen them and maybe turn them around slightly, there might be a way that I can sort of adjust it. So I'm going to try that first. But interestingly, the wobble that I've always had on my table saw when I've had it set there, because if you've seen my videos, it's always in the same place, may not be down to the rubbish floor that I've got in the garage workshop. It may actually be down to the folding stand. But irrespective of that anyway, I'm still going to go ahead and obviously do the project that I'd originally planned to do. But I'm going to just have a fiddle with, undo some of the bolts and just see if I can level it off a bit, because I think 3mm is a lot. Okay, so you will have just seen, I've just had a fiddle with the legs, and I'm pleased to say it's stopped the wobble. I'm just going to check and see it's level still. It is still level. It has slightly shifted. This end has very slightly come up, but it's barely noticeable. So I've corrected the first issue, which was making sure it's level. Now, I've got two ideas in my mind about what I can do for this. The first one is to just literally put a great big piece of wood on the bottom, a base, and then attach everything to that. The other thing I'm thinking is whether I can just put a sort of cross or a brace, a sort of X shape, which will give me sort of cutout, so it will be A, easier to maneuver, and B, the actual sort of trolley, the mobile car it's going to sit on, is going to be a lot lighter than everything. Now, I have got some 22 mil MDF, which I recently bought at B&Q that was in the offcut section, which is pretty substantial. Now, if I do sort of go for some sort of X configuration, I've just got to think very carefully there about how I'm going to sort of do the crossover, whether I'm going to do sort of a butt joint or whether I'm not going to joint it at all, lay one on top of the other. And if I do that, then I'm going to need some structural supports. But the first thing I want to do is make some actual really accurate measurements to see exactly the size we're dealing with, and then I'll make a choice about the wood. So the first thing I did was mark out on the table. I bought these little white pens. I actually bought them from Teamy, but you can buy them anywhere. They're like, I think they use them for writing on like signs and things like that. So I just carefully sort of drew a space around each of the legs of the table, and I marked them. I wrote a little 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. on them, and I also put that on the legs of the folding stand. The good thing about those pens is it just rubs off. If you just wet your finger or get a wet cloth, it rubs straight off. But apart from that, it does actually stay on there, and you can just see the sort of outline shape. Now, I wasn't going for anything too complicated here. I just wanted to see essentially where it landed on the set, as it were, just so I can sort of get some really basic sort of rudimentary measurements. Then I just measured the gap between. So I did take my time and did accurate measurements, but as you'll see in the end of the video, perhaps the measurements were a little bit more important to have thought of in advance than I realised. Okay, so I've done my measurements, and because of the positions of the legs and the fact that they sort of fold in and out, it's not a perfect square, which I didn't expect. So the width I've got is about 77, 78. So I'm going to make it 80 just so I know I've got some sort of wiggle room on the end. And then the length this way, again, is about 68, 69. So I'm going to go for 70. So I need to go sort of 80 by 70. Now I've got a piece of wood. I just mentioned a big piece of MDF which will do it, but it is very heavy, and what I don't want to do is make something that is too heavy for this to work effectively. I have got some offcuts that are going to be long enough, but I think if I choose to do that, I am going to need to reinforce them or strengthen them where the join is. But it does give me the opportunity as well to make sure that I've got this exactly where I want it to be. So I'm going to just get out the wood. I've got a long thin strip because obviously I only need 2 sort of braces. I'm going to see if it's big enough, and then we'll take it from there. Okay, so here are the 2 pieces of wood that I've got. I think earlier on I said this was 22 mil MDF. It's actually 25 mil MDF, and I've got 2 pieces, and these 2 pieces together cost me £5 from the offcut bin at B&Q. The good thing is I've got enough in terms of length. So if I do go for a cross shape, which is what I think I'm leaning towards, and I put it like that, I'm actually going to use offcuts of this other piece of wood to support it, so it'll be sort of double thickness, if you see what I mean. And I think that's going to be the best way to A, keep it nice and neat, make sure it stays in right angles, and B, to secure it. So I've got them. I'm just going to now have a look and see how wide I want them to be. My gut reaction is I don't want them too wide that they weigh a ton, but I want them wide enough that obviously they're going to be strong enough to hold the folding stand onto. And obviously I've got to run this through the table saw, so I'm just going to pop the table saw up onto the workbench to do that rather than sorting it all out. So let's mark all this wood up, run it through the table saw and see where we are. I have to say, I was a little bit worried about running this through the table saw, and it was a little bit sketchier than I would have wanted it to be, only because the wood sort of was tipping at the other end. But I ran all the pieces through. I did make a slight mistake here, actually. You can probably see from the burn mark on that piece of wood there, the wood slightly sort of kicked out as I was sawing it. So of all of my strips, one of them was slightly sort of off-centered. It was much easier cutting these much smaller pieces of wood out. Okay, so you will have just seen from the footage that was a fairly sketchy cut. I'm not going to lie, a little bit worried doing that cut on the table saw, but I got it all done with the exception of one piece, which although I fed it through and it's cut this piece properly, one edge is really rough. It sort of caught the saw a few times, and it's a sort of mixture of 9.8 to 10, but there are bits of it that are 10, so I can use it, because obviously I've only got 3 of these pieces and I'm going to need 4 pieces, one sort of as the cross strut for each of the pieces. And the other interesting thing, I'm not sure if you can see this, hopefully you can, is this wood is fairly bowed, to be honest. When you turn it upside down like so, there is probably on this side, if it's level, there's probably a 2mm gap on this end, which is quite a lot. I mean, the good thing is when this is all said and done and it's got the weight on it, it's going to put it back into shape. But this end is the sort of better end, or the good end. So when I make the cuts, I'm going to mark these and I will use these as the sort of starting point. But when I lay it out on the marks on my table, like so, I've got more than enough room. So what I'm going to do now is mark it to the lengths that I told you earlier. Then we'll start putting it together, and then I can start cutting off the other pieces, because they're going to need to be glued and they're going to need quite a time to dry. So let's get it marked down to the right length now and start cutting. So again, all this marking up, I really took my time. I've never worked with that this size MDF before, so I wanted to make sure that I got everything absolutely right. And to be fair, it is good material to work with. Obviously the biggest problem being that it was very heavy, and then I just cut the pieces that I needed for size on the mitre saw, got them exactly how I wanted them cut. And then with that done, I just sort of slightly weighed it down to stop it moving more than anything else while I measured it up. Okay, so I've laid the wood out exactly in the shape of the stand. And as you can see, it's nowhere near equal. I didn't expect it to be equal because obviously there's an offset on the legs because of the way that they are, but I did expect it to be a little bit more equal than this, but my gut reaction is to go with the shape it is. And the reason is, I think it's very important to get this exactly right. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to drill in here, put a little screw in just to keep these in place. And then these are the offcuts I've got from here. I'm just going to cut a couple out, which are that size, just so it won't move anywhere. And then I'm going to put the stand on just to check I'm in the right place. Now, everything could go wrong. It's the garage workshop, and I've just got to work as methodically as I can. So to me, this being out of shape doesn't matter as long as it's strengthened properly. If it's the right shape for the stand the way it is, then that's it. In fact, I might just drill in and see if I can hold the stand above just to see where we are. So let me, first of all, let's just drill a hole through this. Just put a screw in just to hold it there for now, and then we'll offer up the folding stand and see where we stand. Get it? See where we stand? So this single hole in the middle was essentially just to sort of hold it together and keep it in the sort of orientation that it is, keeping that angle correct. So it was never meant to be a sort of long-term fix, and I actually did end up replacing the screw and it has stayed as a long-term fix. But when I did that, I then just offered up and I've extended those two bits there that you can see. I just offered it up, had a little play around until I had it exactly where I wanted, and at that point the screw still moved. Okay, so as you can see, it fits, and all of the legs are pretty much roughly exactly in the middle, and my angle that I drew at the beginning is exactly where it should be. So this is my plan. Now I know it works. I'm going to fix this centre bit down with some screws to keep it exactly where I want it to be, and then I'm going to find the angles and cut the correct lengths from these battens of wood. In fact, the offcuts are just slightly short. This one might possibly work, but I'm going to have more than enough to do it. So I'm going to cut them, measure the angles, cut them on the miter saw so they're exactly the right side. It doesn't matter that it's not 100%, you know, right angles. All that matters is the wood that's there that reinforces them is keeping it nice and straight. So that's the first thing to do. But the pleasing thing is my original measurements using the wood and fixing them with a screw worked. So next I'm going to make sure I center all of this properly, get that done, and then I'll move on to cutting the sides. So the next thing I did was to actually fix that in place in a much more sort of firm way, and then I used my little angle guide. I can't remember what these things are called, somebody let me know in the comments, to get exactly the right angle, and then I set the miter saw to be exactly that angle, and then I made all of the cuts for all of the pieces that I needed, and that's just obviously straightening up because the ends needed to be straight. It was only one end that needed to be cut, and I was really pleased that when I offered all four of them up, they were pretty much 100% perfect. So that scribe is still set the same way it was for that first set of cuts, and here's me just testing, and luckily and very happily for me it was exactly the same size. So then I just went back to the miter saw, made the rest of the cuts, and really happily left myself with 4 really good door wedges as you can see there as well, and then straightened the cut. So this is the sort of other side cross brace to the one that you've just seen me cut. So I wanted to get them all right, which I've done, and then the next stage was to take the sort of 4 offcuts and permanently fix them. I wasn't too particular about how I did this. To be honest, I didn't measure them or anything like that. And I did originally think that was going to be the bottom, although it doesn't turn out to be that way, as you'll see at the end. And then when I did that, I just moved on to making the 4 sort of what I'm going to call feet that the casters are going to attach to. I then found the centre of each one of them. This is actually quite complicated, what I did here. I started with a Forstner bit to get roughly the size of an M8 nut. When I'd done that and I'd got all of those holes, I then drilled all the way through to give myself, I then used this special little blade I had. It's like an attachment to the drill to hollow out the hole in the rough shape. And then I got the nut, and I did use a bit of brute force and a club hammer here to get it in and get it absolutely level. And then I took them back to the drill press and I drilled this hole all the way through to give me somewhere to mark, and also to help the bolt at the end when I want to adjust the legs, it then has more room to move. I then took the whole thing and sketchily drilled all the way through for my fixings. You'll see in a minute. This was actually really difficult. It looks really easy on the camera, but holding that piece of wood and drilling at the same time was a bit of a challenge. And these little threaded sort of screws I got, I just fixed those into the wood. And actually gravity's going to help me here, because hopefully they'll stay where they are when the weight of the drill is on the top and I'm moving them. Next thing, I just got the blocks of wood, marked out the space for the casters that I'll come back to in a minute. And when I'd pre-drilled all of them, I mean, I know you don't have to worry about splitting with MDF this big, but I just did a little bit of a pre-drill on each of them. I just put like sort of fairly small screws in there. I haven't gone for mammoth great fixings, because I don't actually think it needs it, and the fact that the weight is equally shared amongst all 4 of them, I think, is going to be the key to it. Here's the little threaded bolt I've got. It's an M8 one side, I think an M6 the other. So I just threaded it in and rotated the wheels. And of course, if I want to unscrew it to increase that size, very, very easy to do. I then offered up for the fixings that are going to go on the top. And I just used some little metal brackets that I got. They're little Parkside ones that I got from Lidl. And I fixed them in a very special way that whichever way I'm pushing the trolley, it's always going to be pushing against those brackets. And it's just there to stop the legs sort of sliding off, really. But obviously they're at funny angles, and the angles are there to match. And then I offered it up, put it on. I have to say, with one exception, which you'll hear about in a minute, I was super, super happy with how it turned out. So, fellow woodworkers, I have got to the end of the build, and I have to say I'm really, really happy with the trolley that I've made. I've got fantastic movement all the way around it, and I've got the ability, as you saw in the video from the way that I put the casters on, I've got the ability to individually change the height of one corner depending the surface that I'm on. So I'm super happy with how it's turned out. It's turned out exactly as I imagined it being, which is fantastic. But I'm not going to hide from the elephant in the room, which of course is the height of the unit. Totally down to me. I mean, it is the garage workshop. Somewhere along the line, I'm going to make a mistake. What I failed to do when I calculated all the heights and everything like that, of course, I left out the height of the casters. And these casters are really quite tall. They're 110 mil or 11 centimeter casters. I have ordered some on Amazon, some heavy duty ones that are smaller, and I will make that change. But if it is a big problem, I can always take this off if I'm using it for cutting, you know, big sheet goods and things like that. So I don't think it's going to be a massive issue. And of course, I set out in this to be able to make something that I could move around and adjust the height. So I've achieved both of those, but I will replace the casters when they come and see if I like the look of it. But I'm super, super pleased with it. I'm not going to lie. I'm very happy with how it's turned out. So that is the end of this week's video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If it's your first time at the channel, please can I ask you to subscribe, like, comment, hit the notification bell, and all of those really important things for the Google algorithm. If you are a regular viewer, also don't forget to like and comment. Please don't flame me for the height. I know it's a bit too high, but let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for sticking with this slightly longer video, I think, and I'll catch you on next week's edition of the Garage Workshop. Take care, fellow woodworkers.